Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we are meeting and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the City Governance Committee meeting of the 18th of January 2023. I declare this meeting open at 11:26 a.m. I'd like to advise attendees in the room that this meeting is being webcast and audio recorded. So do any councillors have a leave of absence to declare? We have one up on the screen now. Are there any others? There being none, is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Wilcox has moved the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bradley has. I now will open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Okay. I now refer to declarations of conflicts of interest. Do any councillors wish to declare a conflict of interest against any reports on today's agenda? There being none, I'll now refer to the reports on today's agenda. Okay, the first report is item 5.1, the monthly financial performance report, November 22, and it is a public report. So I need to say... Yeah. So can the Director, Mr Strachan, please enter the public discussions of the report? Mr Strachan, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. Through the chair, actually the acting... Yep, just push the button. Yep. The acting finance manager, Amy Forgiani, will actually deliver the report today. So if the acting finance manager could take the seat, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms Forgiani. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Item 5.1 is the financial performance report for November. I will take the report as read, but will take the opportunity to highlight a few key points. Noting that the adjustments in the first budget amendment are not reflected in this report due to the timing of adoption. Operating surplus year to date at the end of November was 14.6 million, which is 14 mil over budget. Revenue tracking above budget was by 9.4 million, with the variance being driven by increased interest revenue on cash investments, application fees and waste revenue. Operating expenditure is generally behind budget year to date. The labour market conditions continue to impact council's ability to recruit and therefore savings are being realised. Investments' current return on QTC funds is 2.71%, which, as mentioned earlier, is contributing to increased interest revenue. Capital delivery continues to be impacted by supply issues. Delays in program delivery are likely to continue. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll now open the floor for councillors for discussion. So, Councillor Bradley, are there any more questions that people want to ask? Councillor Wilcox. Okay, so Councillor Bradley, you may proceed.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you so much for giving the brief. The surplus of 14.6 million, is that projected to keep increasing, or are we going to see a possible decrease in that surplus?
Yep. There's a budget deficit of 2.6 million planned to 30 June 2023.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. So we're going to watch this space.
Okay, next up we had Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. I'm just noticing on page 4 of the report, or page 11, the sundry debtors, and we still have quite a few that are outstanding. Have we got any updates on any that have now been paid?
Yes, I believe the Pete Flagstone City has paid as of January, early January, and that's the only update I have on those sundry debtors.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Councillor Power.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry about that. Mr Chair, As you know, in the previous council meeting last year, we had budget amendments. And as you remember, unbeknown to us, we had increases in power bills and we've had increase in recycling contract arrangements. And we also have obviously a very volatile financial world out there and high inflation. We have our job to do and we need to make hard decisions. We've got a budget to deliver and we are getting a bit of a stormy sea. Okay, so I'm just using this as a reminder that we must make hard decisions, not easy ones, because ratepayers out there are here to watch us to make sure that we look after their finances in regards to the council runnings. So I just mention that because Councillor Bradley was a little bit surprised. I know it's a long time, last meeting, but we had that budget amendment and that's ongoing. And I just want to ask Robert, because just to reflect on that power bill, that was a pro rata for the year. So what's the estimate for next year?
So the adjustment during the last budget amendment was an increase in the electricity budget by $2.8 million. That's correct, because the cost only went up in the second part of last calendar year. So we're still really waiting to see what comes out of the budget in relation to the full estimate for next financial year, Mr. Mayor.
Have you got any rough figure? Because we're talking about double that.
Yeah, it was double, so it was a significant increase in electricity costs, but as I said, the detail will come out in that budget. At the last budget amendment, you're correct, that went through in the December meeting, so that will be reflected in the December finance report. Overall, the budget amendment report that came through did reflect an extra $13.7 million in costs for the current financial year. That was offset by some savings in employee costs and increase in revenue through interest on surplus cash, but at the end of the day did result in a forecast deficit position at the end of the current financial year.
And have we looked at all avenues of the providers? Have we looked at other providers for our energy needs? Is there any other arrangements? I would imagine other local authorities are experiencing the same particular issue. Can we work collaboratively with the other councils to get a better deal?
They're all good questions, Mr. Mayor. We work with Michael Asnakar's team very closely, so there are a number of initiatives such as solar energy. There's initiatives being worked on currently within Logan Water to save in terms of power costs. We also work very closely with the wholesale providers of energy to strike the best deal we possibly can. And we did delay signing up the new contract last year to wait for a more favourable position with the wholesale cost of energy. So all of those things are in play to minimise those energy costs.
Yeah, that was a bit of a Dorothy Dix, to be honest, because I'm aware of what's happened in the past and also aware of what we're looking at doing at Logan Water. So just wanted to bring that out. But I think it's reflective of what's happening in our residential world and what's happening with our residents and their pain with electricity, which culminates in really what we need to address is that residents are experiencing the exact pain. And we have to be obviously cognizant of that so that we address the budget in a very responsible way, because residents are hurting already. Thank you.
Are there any more questions for the manager? There being none, so there should be a motion up on the screen. So is there a mover for the report's motion as displayed on the screen? Councillor Bradley has moved. Councillor Kerensky has seconded the motion. Do any councillors wish to speak to the motion? There being none, I'll now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you, councillors. That has been carried unanimously. The motion has been carried. Okay, does anyone have any general business for the acting finance manager? There being none, I can say you can go back to work if you wish. Thank you. Yeah. Might be lunchtime. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item 5.2. The title is Proposed Disposal of Land in Hillcrest, and it's a confidential report. So because of that, I'll now refer to item 5.2. Can the director, Mr. Strachan, please enter the discussions?
You're going to read this part, like where it says, I remind the councillors there is no desire to discuss.
Okay, yeah. So I note that item 5.2 is confidential and is considered necessary to take the discussion of this report into a closed session. This matter relates to the Local Government Regulation 2012 in Queensland, section 254J, subsection 3. Do any councillors wish to move into closed session for this item? If the intended discussion overview is different to the prepared motion as displayed on the screen, please also provide updated wording. Okay, so I remind councillors that if there is no desire to discuss the confidential matters, there is no requirement to move into a closed session. So no one does, so that's good. So where do we go now? I just go to that one, eh? Okay. Okay, so can the director, Mr. Strachan, please enter the public discussions of the report? A reminder that we're not in closed session. So, Councillor Bradley, is that a question right now, or is it to do with the report?
As you are the divisional chair, divisional councillor for this area, if you're happy, I'm happy to move it.
I'm very happy.
Happy to move it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so there's a motion about to go up on the screen now. So is there a mover for the report's motion as displayed on the screen? Councillor Bradley has moved. I'm after a seconder. Are there any seconders? Councillor Bannon has seconded the motion. Do any councillors wish to speak to the motion? You wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think one of the things that this doesn't actually indicate quite clearly is the government agencies. Would it be appropriate to highlight that in this respect? Because people who the two people that may be listening at home may not know that that is not going out to a commercial entity. It would be going to a government agency, not to a commercial entity who can make a profit from council relinquishing that land.
Yeah, that information's in the confidential report. But they are two organisations that provide a community benefit, a service to the community. Both of those organisations co-located on that particular site, and have been on that particular site for some time.
Okay, thank you, councillors. We've had a mover and a seconder, so I'll now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. The motion has been carried based on that. Oh, you have to go.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any general business for the acting administration manager? Okay, there being none, thank you, acting administration manager. Okay, the final report on the agenda is item 7.1 about the local infrastructure program. It's a public report, so we're not going into confidential. So I now refer to item 7.1. Can the director, Mr. Strachan, please enter the public discussions on the report?
Thank you. Through the chair. This report is seeking approval for the proposed local infrastructure policy, which has been some time in the making. and it's a very difficult policy to get precisely right. I think we've tried to strike a policy that I suppose improves the governance of the program as well as is pragmatic and allows you to achieve an outcome for the community. The report also seeks additional resources to assist with the administration of the program. So what I'm seeking is your support to put up a service enhancement for the 23-24 financial year to seek LIP administrator to assist finance branch in coordinating what has become a sizable and complex program. Just briefly in relation to the policy itself, there were a number of concerns raised by councillors with regard to the operation of LIP. Matters such as the timely delivery of the projects, the costing of projects, the size of the contingency put into projects was raised as a concern. The way we'd like to basically deal with that particular issue is by encouraging councillors to include as much in terms of LIP allocations through the annual budget process. However, the policy does not mandate that, because I understand that there are always initiatives that council officers and divisional councillors want to fund. I think there was one this morning in the Infrastructure Committee in relation to Radke Road, which is a project that's kind of come along during the year that potentially will be funded out of LIP funding. So that's a good example of where projects arise at a particular point in time. However, in terms of scheduling the projects to assist program owners in delivering those projects, the policy does encourage allocation through the budget process, but it doesn't mandate it. Putting on an additional resource would also assist council in monitoring and reporting on the program. So that would be working with all of the branch managers to ensure that the projects are getting approved in a timely manner and getting delivered in a timely manner, and any adjustments that are made to LIP allocations are made regularly on a monthly basis, and that any money that's left over in relation to projects is identified and reallocated to other projects or other funds. The second one was governance, an important one there, that the Community Benefit Fund is council's only discretionary fund under the local government regulation. So this policy makes it abundantly clear that the local infrastructure program is not a discretionary fund. It's one that is currently projects are allocated or funding is allocated through managers' delegations or authorisations. But moving forward, what the policy proposes is that allocations are approved through either the budget process or through a report to the City Governance Committee. So that brings me to the last point. What we really like to do is improve reporting. Some branches do this better than others, but across the board, it's a very clunky process at the moment in relation to reporting on this program. So what we're proposing is a quarterly report to the City Governance Committee, similar to what we've been doing through the finance report, which just highlights at summary level the allocations out of the local infrastructure program, and also a quarterly report direct to divisional councillors, which contains more detail in relation to LIP allocations and LIP projects. Councillor Stemp raised a very good question with me earlier today, and I really appreciate the heads up in relation to the question, and that was around if the reporting is quarterly, how are we going to get timely approval of projects? The intent of the policy and the guideline was that regular reports, monthly reports, would come up to the City Governance Committee to approve LIP allocations. That is not specifically clear in the guideline. So I've worked on I suppose an alternative recommendation that provides an adjustment to the relevant table in the guideline to make it clear that reports would come to the City Governance Committee monthly or as required to approve allocations and adjustments to that particular program. The rest of the policy and the guideline is very similar to the LIP guideline we've been operating under, and also very similar to policy that we had last term and that was in relation to the Divisional Infrastructure and Capital Improvement Program, the old DICIP program, which preceded the Local Infrastructure Program. So it's really taking us back to the way things were done pre-administration. Happy to take questions. The other thing that was mentioned by Councillor Fraser the other day, and I thought it was a wonderful idea, the question was, well, Robert, you've asked for a position to go through the budgetary process. That means you won't get that position until the 1st of July. Councillor Fraser suggested I might, want to seek funding to put a temporary resource on in the current financial year. So I thought that was a wonderful idea by Councillor Fraser, highly supported by myself to fund a temporary position potentially from infrastructure funding between now and 30th of June to get a handle on this particular program. We're dealing with remnants of DICIP as well as tightening up LIP or getting a handle on LIP. An extra pair of hands would be invaluable in that space. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Strachan. Yeah, it would just help with us with our LIP program, I believe, but it is up to everyone here on the floor. So I'll now open the floor to councillors for discussion. I have Councillor Bradley, Councillor Stamp, Councillor Lane, Councillor Koransky and Councillor Raven. So Councillor Bradley, you may proceed.
Thank you. Through the chair, we've already heard from the Mayor about cutting the cloth to suit the times, which I am very supportive of and always have been. This year is my 15th year will be 15 years since I was first elected as a councillor. So I've got a bit of experience, I would say, of what has happened previous terms where reports would come to council. There wasn't a staff member allocated specifically funded for that. And I think it's very admirable of you to actually put that suggestion that someone be funded and that we do that pre-budget, etc. This is the first term where I've actually planned the whole 4 years of what projects would actually happen in those 4 years based on what the community wanted. I've always had a plan, short, medium, long-term plan. I've ticked off all my bucket lists of all the things that I've promised the community, but it's the first time I've done 4 years in a row, and not much has changed in that time. There's some additional things that have come up, but not much has changed. But my concern, we make this decision and support this. What about new councillors coming in next term? It takes a while for new councillors, as you know, to get their understanding of what goes on, how to do the role as a councillor. Probably took a good 2 years for some people. And my concern is those new councillors, you're setting them up for something that they have no idea about and could be railroaded into doing projects that they have no concept about. But, which I was when I first started, I will admit it, I actually had officers trying to push me to do certain things. So, and I have no doubt that other councillors have experienced that as well. But, I'm not saying anything dodgy, by the way, but my question to you, Robert, is what if I move to receive this report today? What would happen?
What happens with reports once they're received, it's essentially the end of the line for the report. So essentially that would mean, if that was supported by your council colleagues, that we would not have a LIP policy, which I would strongly recommend against.
Okay, so if it was received but we amend the policy in the future, that's a possibility? Receive the report but look at amending the policy in the future, that's a possibility?
We don't have a policy at the moment, so it would be adopting a policy in the future.
Right.
If there were insurmountable issues today that I was unable to answer your questions or address your concerns, the prudent course of action would be to delay adoption of the policy.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend you receive the report, because at the end of the day, I strongly encourage you to adopt a policy in relation to the local infrastructure program.
I understand. It's good practice to have different policies, but I'm not supportive of this report and for asking for staff that have previously done the role in previous terms to actually coordinate all the projects to come up to committee, etc., for committee to support, etc., projects. I've also been involved where politics plays out, where projects that people wanted weren't supported. So I'm just mindful of all that. I just feel it just needs to be tweaked. That's just my opinion, and I'm happy to receive the report when its time comes.
Just to Councillor Bradley, thanks for your questions and your concerns. A couple of points to make there, that the policy has been written in such a way that the policy is owned by the finance branch. So the policy is standalone. If you chose today not to support additional resources, you could still adopt the policy, and then finance branch would need to find the resources to administer the LIP program. So that's one point. They're not linked together. If you don't have an appetite for additional resources, you can still adopt the policy. The second point is in relation to new councillors coming in to next year, local government elections. The policy does not mandate that the LIP is allocated through the first budget process after a local government election. It would be permissible for new councillors to get their head around the program and the needs of their division prior to making LIP allocations, which could then be made at subsequent City Governance Committee meetings, assuming we still have City Governance Committee under the new term. So there would be some time to do that. The way I look at the LIP program, it's always a partnership between the divisional councillor and council officers in relation to projects. It's a discussion, an ongoing discussion. Ultimately, if this policy is decided, then a report would come up to committee for some discussion and adoption ultimately of those LIP projects.
So please forgive me for jumping the cube. I've got a question for Robert as well. So what key differences will we see with a new resource, if that was to go ahead, than what we've seen in the past?
What we currently see at the moment, and to a degree we're battling our systems, which we're trying to improve. We see all of the branches manage LIP differently. They have different project ledgers, different ways of reporting LIP. We know that parks and some branches do it really well through the Green Book. What we're looking to do is replicate that across all branches. So the person in this position would be responsible for coordinating LIP from a council perspective. And we're talking about a $12 million plus program with hundreds of projects. It's a complicated program. So it would be pulling that all together, getting consistency in reporting, and also checking in on delivery, ensuring that councillors are kept in the loop and there's regular reporting back to councillors, and also regular reporting to committee in relation to the authorisation or allocation of the funds out of the LIP program to various projects, and that there is where a councillor wants to change an allocation from one, say from example SLF over to parks, that's put into a council report in a timely manner, and the decision is made by council monthly. So there would be a coordinating role.
And as part of this position, would we be able to contact them direct about any question at all that we have about our LIP projects?
Absolutely, they would be added, so you could directly talk to them about any of the projects listed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I hope that helped to clarify a bit, but maybe not. We'll see. So Councillor Stempler's next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. I just want to mention I really appreciate you bringing this through. I appreciate that there's a lot involved in this. You're dealing with branches, you're dealing with everything coming into finance. We've got reporting online. We've got all these factors. But I still think that there's some things possibly missing from the policy. As I mentioned to you this morning, look, my concern is obviously we put the ideal scenario is every 4 years, but projects come up all the time. And that's what, we talk to the community all the time. There's things that come up all the time. So we've got to be able to basically get these through in a timely manner. You mentioned about the monthly, bring it up to city governance monthly. My concern there is the lead up to a report for, say, governance. Is it a 6-week lead up for a report to come to committee? Like, what I'm trying to understand is, if we had a project come to us, say it was for a dog bin, for example, if it came to us today, how long would it be before it would actually get to a governance meeting for approval?
The key indicator would be the cut-off for agendas for committee. So a report would need to be written and actually submitted to the agenda. It's not a 6-week lead time. These reports wouldn't be overly difficult to draft. There would be, I suppose, a template, a table that would be completed for the proposed LIP project. So they wouldn't be days or weeks in the making. They would be quite easy to put together. So generally, I think the agenda closes around 2 weeks prior to committee, because we like to get the agenda out to you over a week before the committee. So managers and directors need some time with the reports prior to that. So it's around a 2-week lead time up into committee. So it wouldn't be anywhere near 6 weeks.
Okay, so we'd need to be aware of those cut-off dates.
Pardon me, Councillor Stemp, Mr Mayor has to leave, so he has a burning question.
Yep. It's not a burning question. I just wanted to state that I've got a 12 o'clock meeting. The clock's actually wrong, so just let you know it's actually 11:57. These need to be reset for obviously administrative purposes, but I have to leave. I've got a lot of council staff coming to my office, but what I would like to say is this is a very serious issue. I want you to deal with it responsibly. It's not about you. It's about obviously the message it sends to the residents. As you know, budget-wise, I've been attacked over this particular issue, so you need to be very, very transparent. And it's not about you. It's about how it's perceived out in the community. It's not your money. It's actually the residents' money. So just leave it with.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Back to you, Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So there to me, it's just a few elements I'd like to see added to the policy. I'd like to have some more information about about unspent divisional allocations left over from projects being reprovisioned, because it talks about unallocated funds to projects, but not necessarily about unallocated funds from finished projects and how soon we can get them into other projects, because I know a lot of them sit there. So again, it's about things happening on a timely basis so that they don't get left behind. I'd like to see a definition of the low-risk local infrastructure program, because again, that's rather broad, and obviously I know that some projects do go out to lease facilities for them to manage themselves, and understand what that means. And if obviously a project goes out to tender, so we approve a project that's approved through council, goes out to tender, comes in higher than 10 grand above what was resolved, then understand it'll have to come back to another governance meeting in order for the project to carry on. So the project potentially could be put on hold until such time as that's gone through again. So I'm just concerned things are going to get pushed back and back. So we need to just be sure of that. And the other question I've got is, when the report comes to council, what will the actual recommendation be? So what are we actually voting on? Are we saying that we agree that everybody's project should proceed? Can we say that someone's project can't proceed? I'm just curious to understand exactly what the recommendation is likely to be on that monthly report.
Sure, good questions, Councillor Stamp. And I imagine in relation to tender activities, that's where I suppose a contingency in relation to projects might come in to buffer some of those minor changes in terms of what comes back in terms of the tendered price. But in relation to the monthly report, effectively council would be making the decision with regard to the budgetary allocation. So you allocate as part of the budget an amount of money to the local infrastructure program, just over $12 million. What the monthly decision would be through the City Governance Committee would be that amount of money, or a portion of, be allocated to a program, to the footpath program, or to a specific project. So it's actually a council decision to move the money out of the central pool, because we hold it in reserve, until such time as we have a council decision to allocate it to a project. So it's actually deciding on that allocation.
Okay. All right, and obviously, so look, my thoughts are, I think this is a good start. I personally would like to see this deferred till next round, because I think there's some work that needs to be done in to get this right, and I'm sure other councillors have their own contributions as well. So that's just my final note there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stamp. So I've got Councillor Lane, Councillor Koransky, Councillor Raven, Councillor Wilcox, Councillor Russell, Councillor Bradley again, and Councillor... Sorry? Okay, so, and Councillor Jeremiah. So, Councillor Lane, you're up now.
Thanks very much through you, Mr Chair. Director, I asked a question before the meeting started, which is this a new position? And yep, you said yes, it was, and I had a bit of a giggle to myself. Now, DICIP was in place. Did we have a specific DICIP officer in order to run an $8.4 million program that allocated funds to divisional projects?
I'd have to cast my mind back. He was run out of the city governance branch back then, Councillor Lane. I think we had officers that dealt with DICIP. I don't know whether there was a specific officer.
That's no worries. And what is the amount that the finance branch deals with on an annual basis? What budget do they work with on an annual basis in the finance branch?
Overall council budget is approximately $1 billion budget.
Right, and $12 million of $1 billion budget equates to how much? Not a lot. My concern is that we're creating a position for a budget that is just $12 million. I did raise with you that one of the branches has an amazing spreadsheet which details the amount allocated, the amount that's been used so far. It updates regularly. There is capacity to see what has remained unspent. We have the capacity to look forward, and they managed to do that as a branch. And I understand from your comments and listening to answers that you believe that this individual person who could be employed in this position would actually do that. We're already doing it. It's just the other branches need to adopt and amend their way and practices of actually putting through this money. It's $12 million. It is not a huge amount. There are a number of projects that have been put through to community services, and they run them quite well, and I know where they're up to and what budgets are remaining. They have a very capable way of doing it, and I think council as a whole can actually deal with that. I'm not supportive of this position, but I'm also very weary of another councillor deciding whether or not a local project means a lot to my community. I have grave concerns over that. But if, in the interest of transparency, I actually put it in a newsletter what local money is being spent on. So I feel like I'm being extraordinarily transparent with local residents on what's going on. I don't know that the report actually, bringing it back to a governance committee every time we want to change, amend or improve something is the best way to go forward, but that's just my opinion on this. I'm with Councillor Stamp in that I would like to see this report brought back to a future city governance meeting, so that we can ask more questions and have a very robust conversation. I do believe in openness and transparency. I don't believe that paying someone to do the job for a $12 million project that is already being done is the way to go. That's just my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Koransky's next up.
Thank you. I've got a bit to say too, so just bear with me, please. The first thing I just wanted to say is, why don't we have a policy around LIP? After we went through administration, and I know the administrator was very proactive about making sure that the groundwork was done for the new council, and there was a lot of discussion around discretionary budgets and what were discretionary budgets, and is what we now call the LIP budget, formerly the DICIP budget, a discretionary budget. So I understood all those gates were closed before this council got here. So what's changed, Robert, and why don't we have policy?
Good questions, Councillor Koransky. So during administration, the DICIP policy was repealed, so there was no DICIP program. Then we got the new council. You all started your term, and the overwhelming decision was that we needed to bring back DICIP or something like DICIP, and ultimately we brought back the local infrastructure program.
May I just ask a quick question? The administrator was actually allocating funds out of that former DICIP bucket of money though, wasn't it? So it's not like it stopped at any point in time. There were still funds being allocated.
That there were, and that's right. And then basically the program ceased, and the money was no longer actually provided during the budget process as it was under the DICIP program. So we do have some amounts of DICIP we're still dealing with. That will be the subject of a separate report to committee. When we brought back the local infrastructure program, so the budgetary decision was made to reinstate it, the actual amount of money, we should have brought in a policy at the same time. So instead what was brought in was a local infrastructure program guideline, which has seen us through until this point in time, but a review of the local infrastructure program and advice that we've sought indicates that we really need a policy to, I suppose, cover council from the optics of it potentially looking like a discretionary fund. So what we're trying to achieve here is a tightening of governance and increased transparency, because effectively the decision to allocate the money needs to be a council decision. It's not a decision that individual councillors can actually make.
I understand the latter part. I'm just surprised that we hadn't dotted our I's and crossed our T's. I think everybody in this room or the councillors would think that we had. So that's news to me, but I accept what you're saying. One of the concerns I have is with regard to red tape. The local infrastructure program budget, as the administrator had said, was really to tackle the rats and mice projects around council. So when a resident comes to me and says, I'm tired of seeing dog poop in the park and I want a dog poop bin, if that resident said that to me today, I would typically have a chat with the Parks Department. We'd talk about unallocated LIP or whether there's LIP, and that would go in and that would be delivered in a relatively short period of time. What would the process look like, further to what you were saying before, Councillor, with me getting my dog poop bin? How long do you think that would take from the day the resident raised the concern until the day the dog poop bin turns up in the park?
The only change in the, I suppose, the process that you've outlined would be that it would be subject to a report back to the City Governance Committee. So in that particular case, it seems like a fairly straightforward request. I imagine they could get the information together and get it into a report for even the next round of committee.
So wouldn't the parks manager need to provide that information in terms of reporting information to be able to go across to the finance? So it would take the parks people time to actually create the collateral that would then go across the finance time. So I hear what you're saying from your department's view, it might take a couple of weeks, but I don't accept that it would just suddenly magically come across. It's going to take the work of the Parks Department. We're putting another link in the chain, is what I see, which I see as delaying the projects. So that's my concern with regard to that. In the last term with the DICIP funding, it did come back to council. Did that actually come back before the funding was allocated, or it came back after the funding was allocated? I'm trying to remember how it worked.
My understanding of it, Councillor Kransky, it came back before the funding was allocated out of reserve to that particular project.
Which is why there wasn't delay in the delivery of the projects. Okay, got that. I'm just concerned that effectively we're creating an SOI for projects. So we could get rid of this entirely and it could simply go into roads, into footpaths, into various other things. But the whole point of this is to make sure the small projects that get overlooked by the larger areas of council and branches of council don't get missed. You know, I saw the intent here, which councillors have touched on, for 4 years down the track. There's certainly projects I'm allocating for 2 and 3 years, you know, road upgrades and things like that. But there's equally as many teeny tiny little projects that I would fear would get lost in this process.
They shouldn't get lost. The process shouldn't change. The only difference is they will be put onto a table that's attached to a report that comes back to the City Governance Committee. So there's nothing in this policy that basically will change the nature of those small, as you say, rats and mice projects.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Councillor Kransky. We've got Councillor Raven up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Robert, and through you, Robert, on page, I think it's page 3 of the report and 13 of the agenda, where it says general guidelines for individual projects, and then, so it's page, and the number 11, which is on page 13 or page 4 of the report, says, where following consultation, the relevant manager and divisional councillor have differing views on the scope or scale of the project will be referred to the relevant director for further consultation. Where the matter cannot be resolved with the director, a report will be prepared for council to consider the matter. Wouldn't all projects automatically be considered by council? So there's just going to be an extra report if you don't agree with the director?
I would see that it would be covered under the same report that would come up monthly.
Cool. And then, so the goal here, and my understanding from when it was discussed last year, was to essentially return us to the level of transparency we had when DICP existed. Like, you're going back to the way things were, right? What is old is new again. And the dog poop bin is a great example. So if I had a small amount of funds that sat with the Parks Department, say 50 grand, and that was voted on by council whenever at the start of the term or every year or whenever it happened to go down, and that 50 grand sat there for very, very small projects, below $2,000 projects. When the dog poop bin comes up and I go to and I go hit up, Blair's not in the room, and I go hit up Blair and I go, Blair, this is a burning issue for the community.
It often is.
It often is. It's often the smallest issues that create the most outrage and frustration for residents, especially if it takes 6 to 8 weeks to fix. If that fund's already sitting with the Parks branch and the manager is supportive of the project, then it just gets funded straight away. Is that right?
I would imagine it would be. So if you want to put an amount of money with a particular program, whether it be for bins or footpaths or so forth and so on, as long as the decision that council makes in relation to, a certain amount of money is allocated to a particular branch for a particular purpose, I think that would suffice. So you wouldn't need to go down to the individual bin, you would just look at the allocation to that particular program.
Because I agree with the sentiment that Councillor Kransky expressed when she said that if we get to the really detailed red tape level where there's a vote coming to the board of $1 billion organisation for a $1,500 dog bin, that's not good governance. That's poor governance. That's governance hysteria, and it also unnecessarily slows down the operation of council. But I am supportive of having, as I said at the beginning of the term when we were in COVID and we were meeting down in LEC, and I said when we voted on the LIP policy then, I said I am concerned that this money is going to be spent in the background with councillors talking to staff. There's no transparency for the community to know where councillors are spending what. Just from a point of interest too, from my point of view, I don't know what Councillor Bradley is spending her money on, and she often spends it on smarter things than me. And I get ideas from her, and I go, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that too, right? And I know other councillors have the same thing. We get ideas from each other, and we see fantastic ideas. And when it doesn't come up to committee at all, council has to go looking for that information somewhere, either through the councillor portal or through some other means. And it's not as efficient and it's not as transparent. So I'm very supportive of bringing back a policy that means every month the community and councillors can see what their colleagues are supportive of being spent on in their divisions. I think that is really valuable, and I'm not, I know there's some pushes to defer and there's some pushes to receive, but I think that putting that transparency off isn't a great look, and it's not a good thing for the community. Is the report perfect? Probably not. Could we adopt it and then amend it when we see how it's working in process? Definitely, and I would be very supportive of that, because I think we've got to bring back that transparency, because it's literally been 3 years since I said, hey, we should have a monthly report that says where LIP's being spent, and it's never happened. And that's not on you. I know there's been issues with a whole bunch of other governance policies that are being reviewed and updated, but this is a good step in the right direction. I'm very supportive of it. I want to see more of that transparency come back so that the community knows where the money is being spent and can give their opinion on it to their local councillor, and probably give some suggestions on how we could spend it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. I have Councillor Wilcox up next. Are you ready to ask your question? Yep.
Sorry, thanks. My thinking was sort of along the lines of quite a few points that have already been brought up. But for the smaller projects, for me, rather than allocating money to $50,000 to parks or something like that, which we could do, with those smaller projects, because I literally signed off a LIP project this morning for a dual bin enclosure to be put into one of my parks. It was about $13,000. Could we actually have, if we're going to do monthly reports, could you have these allocations have been signed off by the councillor, listing what we've done, so we are being transparent. Yes, there's $50,000 sitting in parks for that councillor, but they've also just signed off these couple of projects to come out of parks to happen in their division. That way then it's actually being even more transparent rather than just saying there's $50,000 here. We don't really know out in the community where it's going.
When the so the ultimate decision there is the allocation to the program, so the $50,000 to the program. When we report the allocations, we could report how much money has been allocated out of that $50,000 towards specific projects. That is possible.
So for me, that's one tweak that I would like to see. You know, if it's under 50,000, something like that. Now, I'm very jealous of Councillor Bradley being able to plan so far in advance, because she has been in for 15 years, so she's been able to plan so far in advance. Because my only concern is having to meet budget timeframes and having all my projects up and going sort of thing by the 31st of March annually, to allow for that detailed planning and scheduling and that sort of thing, because I'm still so green, I'm still so new, I'm working on the hop. I literally started from scratch with no real projects in the pipelines for the division or anything like that. So I'm slowly, you know, going through different parks that come up for asset renewal, and I don't know when they're coming up for asset renewal. I literally get it dropped on me. Oh, this one's coming up for asset renewal. Oh, okay, sweet. Yes, okay, let's go through some consultation and stuff like that. And I'm literally trying to do consultation on 2 different parks at the moment as well. And working through previous funding that has been there and where's it going and what's it sitting with. So that for me, I'm only concerned because if I don't get all of my projects up and going basically by the 31st of March to pop it into that next budget round, does that then put me totally at the bottom of the list to go after everyone's detailed planning and scheduling? So I'm literally then at the bottom of the barrel, and I totally get it. But in the end, maybe if Councillor Bradley has planned all of hers will get delivered first and they'll get done, but then there'll be nothing at the back end, and then all of mine will get delivered at the back end, which is what I'm sort of getting at the moment, and that sort of thing. So that's a bit of a concern for me. I don't know if you wanted to say anything to that one.
Oh, look, so through the chair, all I can reiterate is that I suppose the budgetary process, as the policy says, is the primary mechanism, I guess, for budgeting and for scheduling. It's encouraged in the policy to allocate as much as you can, specifically to the bigger projects through the budget, but it's not a requirement. You can still allocate money to projects through city governance reports and decisions. But having said that, it does make it very much easier for the program owners if they know ahead of time what they're delivering. But they will do their best to deliver those projects as they do now, as they're approved.
Okay. And just with regards to the staff member moving forward, specifically, I think what's missing out of this report and probably missing out of the guidelines is what that staff member will actually be doing. Will they be chasing, because I know it's very hard, it's hard for me, it's probably hard for some others. At the moment, for the branches, if we allocate funding to a project, to find out how much is actually coming back in and stuff like that, and I've said that for quite a while now, that we're not getting that back, and I would have liked to have seen a LIP form with an extra form on the back saying this is how much your project has saved in the end, this has now been put back, either allocated back to that branch, allocated back to the LIP funding for the division so that you can reallocate it to something else. You know, will they be holding the branches to the account? Will they be following up on the branches for us? How frequently will they be talking with us? What is their, that's missing, what does their job actually entail? And I think that's probably missing from this, and it's making us all a little bit shy, I guess.
So through the chair, Councillor Wilcox, that detail would have been in the service enhancement that will come back. So really the first part today in relation to an additional resource next financial year is subject to a budgetary decision. So I would put up a service enhancement, so that's basically what I'm flagging today, put up a service enhancement to that effect, which would contain a lot of that detail.
Okay. I would probably like to go down Councillor Stamps and move this out for another month so that we can have more discussions and refine this just a little bit more as well.
Through the chair, the decision in relation to the resource, as I said earlier, is very separate to the actual policy itself. Yeah.
Is that it, Councillor Wilcox? Yeah. Okay, so just so we know which motion to put up to, if someone does prefer to defer, please say so when you speak. So yeah, no straw polls or anything, but yeah, I've heard 3 or 4 people now. So, and there's still a few more people to go. So I've got Councillor Russell, Councillor Jeremiah, Councillor Raven, Councillor Bradley. So Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak in relation to the new role specifically. Okay, I hope that this is understandable. It sounds like the main purpose of this new role is to coordinate between the various branches to make for a smoother process for LIP. Is that right? Okay. So my understanding is that the new Portfolio Management Office serves a similar process, although not necessarily intended to serve this specific purpose. Is that right?
A very similar role at a much higher level in relation to council enterprise projects, if you like. So significant projects across council to make sure that there are synergies and those projects are in sync. It's not their role to manage projects at this level.
Understandable. I'm just wondering that if into the future, as the PMO tidies up any sort of misalignments between branches, if this role might necessarily be required, like it might have tidied things up to a point where the branches are sort of working in the same direction. And I just wanted to sort of raise that concern before we're putting a new role that, you know, we sort of can't go backwards from, that's all.
If there wasn't the appetite to put on the new role, we would absolutely need to find the resources within finance branch to undertake that work, to make sure that we are reporting in an accurate and timely way. I guess what I'm suggesting is really at the point in time with everything else that's on their plate, this is just an extra body of work they haven't had a chance to get to. That's where the additional resources, even if the additional resources were temporary, would be of great assistance to the branch.
Thank you. I think I'm not necessarily against the, if it's in a temporary capacity, I'm not necessarily worried about it, and if it's, as long as it's temporary.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Jeremiah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. I think that it's clear that there isn't a lot of clarity right now regarding this policy and different opinions on it. I think Councillor Stemp pointed out some very good clarifications that can be made regarding that policy. So when appropriate, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to second that this report is deferred to a future City Governance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeremiah. Councillor Raven again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. So for the project officer, Robert, if I could just encourage you to do what the grants team did, which was create temporary roles to demonstrate the benefit through discretionary effort within the branch. So when councillors are asking, what does this even mean? When they come to budget, they already know what it means because they see the good work that it does. You may find that you get more support for it then because they can see how beneficial it is. The other one I'll just draw to councillors' attention is that we're trying to keep this away from being a discretionary budget. So when words like I signed off, my projects get used, that's the definition of discretionary, right? So, and if there's discretionary budget greater than what our CBF is, then it will get taken away by the law. So what we're trying to do by voting on it every month is demonstrate that it's not a decision that I get to make on whether or not I put $100,000 into traffic calming and other initiatives in Division 5 every year. It's a decision that council makes, that that's an appropriate use of public money, and then the councillor, as the local expert, is consulted on where that $100,000 should be spent. That takes it away from being discretionary because we've all made the decision as a cohort that that's an appropriate use of that public money. At the moment, we don't make that decision as a cohort anywhere. We all individually consult with branches and consult with officers, and officers make a recommendation that we sign off on, and it creates this weird governance place where it feels like it's councillors' budget. And councillors don't have budgets other than CBF. So that's why this is really important. If you want to defer it to get more clarity, I agree. Late reports are always fun, Robert. I was literally reading it this morning because I came back to work today and read all my read all of my other agendas last week, but didn't realise you'd flick this one through till this morning. So that may be a consequence of bringing forward a late report, but I just want to reinforce the importance that we have to get away from any accusation that this money is discretionary. Because if it can be called discretionary, then it can be taken away and we just have CBF and that's it. And that's not good for our community and it's not good for their expectations of what they want done in their electorates.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. So I have two people, Councillor Bradley and Councillor Lane. Are there any more at all? Because we're looking a bit weary, I think, but that's fine. This is good discussion. So no one appears like they want to speak again. So yes, please proceed, Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. Look, I'm definitely all in support of policy, but I feel this really needs to be tweaked a little bit further. And I definitely am not supportive of a particular officer to do the role. I know when the CEO started, I actually gave him feedback about the Parks branch do an amazing job of coordinating all the divisional projects, not our projects, divisional projects, giving you feedback monthly, what's going on, how it's going on, etc. What has not been allocated, even though they've gone out for tender, etc. What has been left behind that can be allocated to another project, etc. So if a branch can do that, I gave feedback. Why can't other branches do that? So Councillor Raven, you're welcome to come and have a look at my spreadsheet here with what has been planned out for the 4 years. It is on council system. Anyone can RTI it, but I'm very supportive of the transparency. I would be supportive of deferring this so it can be tweaked a bit more. I am concerned of the consequences of it being supported now. That and just doing trial and error. We all know how long it takes for reports to come up. So please, I know there's a number of people who said they've moved and would second, etc., but I'm happy to defer.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Lane.
Sorry, just one last question to the Director. How many complaints of unusual bias by a councillor in the LIP spending has council received since 2020, as in the community doesn't agree with the allocation of community spending?
To be honest, I can't recall, Councillor Lane, which would indicate not many, if any.
So in terms of overall transparency, I think that there's not a lot of concern out there. I know personally I pay for my own newsletter to report everything that's being spent out of the Division 2, and I call it the Division 2 Local Infrastructure Fund, Program Fund, pardon me. So just out of curiosity, and that's the reason why I asked this question, so there's been no complaints that we are not being open and transparent with the allocation of funding in each division. I think every councillor is out there spruiking what the community is delivering through its ratepayer dollars, what council is delivering for the community through its ratepayer dollars. This report I don't know why it rubs me the wrong way. I'm all about transparency and openness. It just rubs me the wrong way. So if we can defer it so we can get to something that's not quite raising the hackles on my back, that says that I'm somehow not doing my role properly, that would be awesome.
So to the Chair, the intent of this report is not to say that the allocations out of the LIP project have been wrong or they haven't been the right projects that the community need. I guess what it's suggesting is that the mechanism for actually approving the budget against those projects needs to come through a committee. Absolutely, as the divisional councillor, you know the best what your community needs. And that's what's happened in terms of the DICP and now the LIP program. So there's no question with that. What we're trying to do here is basically say it's a decision of council. Councillor Raven articulated it nicely. It's a decision of council to commit those funds to particular programs or projects. That's all it really is trying to achieve.
Mr. CEO, would you also like to enter the discussions at all really quickly? I'm curious to hear what you've got to say.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just reiterate what Robert said. What's important in this from here on now because you want to defer it and for tweaks. This report will be back next round, okay? So if you have tweaks you want to make, send them through to Robert and we can look to incorporate them, because we can't go on allocating the way we are because I don't think it's legal. That's the point we're trying to make here, is what you're doing isn't in accordance with the Local Government Act. And so the sooner we get this fixed, the better. Excellent question.
All right, thank you. So there are no further questions or comments? No? All right, so... Okay, so we're going to put up a motion. So we're going to put up the deferral motion, because that seems to be what people want. But yes, Councillor Bannon?
Councillor Might just had a good point. If the CEO has just sat there and said what he thinks we're doing is not legal, how are we supposed to vote against it? Like, seriously.
So we have two motions and to adopt the policy and things like that. So, yes, Councillor Bradley?
Is it possible to defer for full council and we can give feedback?
Okay, so is everyone happy with deferring to full council? So 1 week to deal with it. I'm not seeing any head shakes, so we'll put that motion up then. Bear with us for a sec, please. They've moved and seconded a motion, though. Do we need to put it up, though, or can we just change it? Someone moved and seconded to defer to next month. You didn't call for it. Yeah, I didn't call for it, but... Okay, because I didn't call for a mover and a seconder for that motion to defer for another month. We don't have to actually follow through with voting on that. So, someone say defer to next week. Is that correct?
Council meeting.
Yeah, so deferring to council. So,
So is there a mover for that?
so is there a mover for that motion? There is. Yep, so Councillor Stamp moved. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bradley? Are there any people that wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Lane?
Thanks very much. I have meetings with council officers on local infrastructure program fund items and agendas this week and early next week, which will have to be put back. So the original motion minus the staff member is okay for me, quite frankly. Otherwise, I can't do that meeting. If the CEO is saying that we're operating outside the guidelines, then I can't actually do that meeting and allocate funding.
Point of order.
Councillor Raven?
Sorry for the wincing. I have a cracked rib and a cough. The decision wouldn't have been made till next Wednesday either way, Councillor Lane. So the meetings you are happening can continue on in good faith. But the decision was not going to be made before Wednesday. All we make in this room is recommendations to Ordinary Council, which is the decision-making body.
Are there any more? Okay, can Cherie please enter the discussions?
Through you, Mr Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. What I might suggest that we do is, so that we can have a really frank discussion, is to move into closed for the purpose of receiving legal advice. So if someone's happy to move that motion, and we can quickly move into closed so that I can provide you that advice.
So, yep, so I'd like a mover to move into closed session for legal advice. So Councillor Bannon has moved, Councillor Wilcox has seconded. Now, yeah, this is taking a while, I know, people, but please, yeah, bear with us. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. So that has been carried unanimously. Thank you. So can we please
Rise and shine, see that light coming through the window pane. No more rain, nope, nope. This is the summer of love. You and me set free, gonna have fun. Here it comes, it's another sunny day. Hey, take a look, it's amazing. Let's get moving, won't you say hey? Time isn't wasting. I'm alive under sky, a bird that took flight under the sun. Feel my delight. Rise and shine, see that light coming through the window pane. No more rain, nope, nope. This is the summer of love. You and me set free, gonna have fun. Here it comes, it's another sunny day. Hey, take a look, it's amazing. Let's get moving, won't you say hey? Time isn't wasting. เคยเป็นบ้างไหมที่ใจตรงนี้ไม่มีพลังเธอเคยรู้สึกไหมบางครั้งหัวใจก็สิ้นหวังบางคนมีความฝันแต่มันไม่เป็นไปแบบนั้นเริ่มค่อยๆหมดหวังชีวิตของคนก็เท่านั้นหมดหวังสิ้นหวังคำเหล่านี้ที่มันไม่ดีกับตัวฉันคอยย้ำว่ามีหวังพูดซ้ำๆย้ำกับตัวเองลองอีกครั้งมันจะยากเท่าไรและเราจะยังสู้ไปถ้ามันต้องเหนื่อยเท่าไรต้องคิดว่าเราทำได้ต่อให้หนทางไกลล้มลุกคลุกคลานมากมายแต่สุดท้ายของคนต้องเดินรนสู่ต่อไปต้องเดินรนสู่ต่อไปต้องเดินรนสู่ต่อไปต้องเดินรนสู่ต่อไปคนเรามีชีวิตและมีเวลาเท่ากันแต่เราจะใช้ตรงนั้นให้มันมีค่าเท่าไหร่บางคนเริ่มจากศูนย์เพื่อไปให้ถึงเส้นชัยเราคงขาดไม่ได้คือหัวใจที่มีพลังหมดหวังสิ้นหวังคำเหล่านี้ที่มันไม่ดีกับตัวฉันคอยย้ำว่ามีหวังพูดซ้ำๆย้ำกับตัวเองลองอีกครั้งมันจะยากเท่าไรและเราจะยังสู้ไปถ้ามันต้องเหนื่อยเท่าไรต้องคิดว่าเราทำได้ต่อให้หนทางไกลล้มลุกคลุกคลานมากมายแต่สุดท้ายของคนต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไปมันจะยากเท่าไรและเราจะยังสู้ไปถ้ามันต้องเหนื่อยเท่าไรต้องคิดว่าเราทำได้ต่อให้หนทางไกลล้มลุกคลุกคลานมากมายแต่สุดท้ายของคนต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไปต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไปต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไปต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไปต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไปต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไปต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไปต้องดิ้นรนสู่ต่อไป
could pick up my calls. Haven't hit in your line all day, all night. 'Cause baby, I wanna make it up to you. Wanna make it up to you. But baby, I know what's wrong more than once or twice. I'm just calling you up to apologize. I made a mess and I told you lies. Made a mess and I told you lies. Would you let me make it up to you? Make it up to you. I wish you could pick up my calls.
And that again. Okay, yeah, and I do note that Councillor Wilcox left the room probably 5 minutes ago. She has a meeting with residents. So we're back, ready to go. The recording stopped. Okay, now prior to going into confidential, we moved and seconded a motion. So I was wondering if the mover and the seconder would like to withdraw their motion.
Being to withdraw mine.
Mr Chair, I'm happy to withdraw the motion as the...
Yeah. Thank you, councillors. So the mover and the seconder for the deferral motion, they've withdrawn it now. So what we're about to see is another motion. That was the original motion. So could we please just scroll through gently? Everyone's had time to sort of read that quickly and digest it. Everyone's happy with that? Okay, so where are we? So there's a motion up on the screen. Is there a mover for the report's motion as displayed on the screen?
I'd like to speak to the motion too, please.
Are there movers though first, or? That no one wants to move the motion. Okay, so Councillor Lane wishes to move, Councillor Raven wishes to second the motion, and I have Councillor Bradley and Councillor Lane that wish to speak to the motion. So, yep. So, Councillor Lane, you may speak to the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, in light of the information given to me by the City Solicitor during that confidential portion of committee, I'm supportive of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, through the chair. I definitely am supportive of the motion, with the exception of in relation to the staff member reference. But I just want clarification between now and when this is adopted next week from the CEO. Can you just confirm that we can give feedback?
Through Mr. Chair, so the opportunity between now and the council meeting next week is for council councillors to raise any adjustments they might consider appropriate for the LIP policy. We can provide advice on that. The councillor can then seek to amend the policy on that individual item in council next week.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Councillor Koransky also put her hand up. Are there any more people that wish to speak or speak for or against the motion? No, so Councillor Koransky.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity regarding a couple of the issues that I had. I certainly support the intent of where this is going. When we know better, we do better. So I'm happy to support this today and welcome being able to provide feedback in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Koransky. Mr. CEO, would you like to wrap up at all?
Through Mr. Chair, just to note, that was a good discussion with the council. We've got good advice to the council. I think what's proposed in the policy provides a firm basis for council to go forward with decisions on the LIP program, and the organisation will ensure that any decisions that are made are done appropriately in accordance with the policy.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, there being no more speakers for or against the motion, we've had a mover and a seconder. So I'll now open the floor to vote for the motion up on the screen. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, so everyone's raised their hand. Thank you, councillors. That has been carried unanimously. Sorry.
Yeah, we've passed the motion. Did you want to have a statement at the end of it, or? Oh, you did.
Okay, thank you, councillors. So that concludes the agenda for today. Does anyone have any general business for the Director of Organisational Services? There being none, I also note that we have the Director of People and Engagement here today. Does anyone have any general business for the Director? Okay, there being none, I guess that is the end. So therefore I declare the City Governance Committee meeting of the 18th of January 2023 concluded at 1:12 p.m. Thank you, councillors.